evening, everyone. It is indeed with a lot of delight and pleasure that I welcome you once again to this highly informative production with the Social Secretaries Summit. The Social Secretaries Summit are just indeed a bunch of warm-hearted individuals who have the responsibility of planning events. And as a result, they bond together, they collaborate, create very strong bonds, very strong friendships, do a lot of things, that would enable them to enhance their communication skills. Indeed, what the Social Secretary Summit would like to do is to reach out to and touch lives in a variety of ways. Tonight is just about that. Tonight is a night that, has been put together to ensure that our aims and objectives are met. You will see for yourself that tonight is a night where the Social Secretary Summit have produced, organized an event where, the total human experience, be it age, be it social, be it the economic sector, is being actually looked at. And without further ado, I'm going to hand you over to a very, very able moderator, Dayo Akode. I really wish that, as you listen and as you participate, that your experience today will be second to none. Thank you very, very much. Over to you, Dayo.
Thank you, Tola. Good evening, everybody. Welcome to this evening's event. My name is Dayo Akode, and I will be your moderator this evening. We have a number of hosts and co-hosts in attendance. So that's Olu, Bumi, Rashid, Tola, and Femi. So if you have any questions, please put it in the chat and one of them will pick it up. So before we start, I'm just going to run through the rules very quickly.
What? For what?
All attendees will be muted. This is just to reduce the volume of background noise. So can I please ask you to check and click on the mute icon yourself if the hosts are unable to do so. It just reduces the amount of noise and it means we can a more pleasurable experience. There will be a question and answer session after the presentation, and this will be led by Oludada. So if you have any questions during the presentation, please type it into the chat box and Olu will ask the question on your behalf. There will be links and websites referred to within this presentation, and those will be posted in the chat box. If you miss a link due to the volume of messages, please post a message within the chat box and one of the hosts will respond to you. It is important that we continue to receive feedback on events of this nature, and an exit survey will be inserted for completion after the presentation. Can I respectfully ask that you complete this survey? It helps us a lot. Before we start the presentation, and I call Tokunbo on, I think the responsible thing to do is emphasize that Tokunbo is here this evening in an advisory capacity to provide information and advice on recruitment within the civil service. It is not a guarantee that you will get a civil service job because there are other things that you need to complete in order to do so. Thank you very much. So just before I call her, I'm going to give a quick bio on her. Can I just ask that you check that you are muted, please? Okay. So COVID-19 has ushered in a huge influx of job seekers, and a recent BBC report stated that showed the largest drop in employment in over a decade. The UK, the government says, is now officially in recession. As a result, it has never been more important than ever to ensure that job seekers are equipped with the right knowledge, tools, and skills to prepare for entry or re-entry into the jobs market. A recent article in the Metro newspaper stated that where you usually would have 20 applicants to a job, you can have as much as 100 applicants to a job. So this evening, one of us, a member of the Social Secretaries Summit, whilst also being a Social Secretary of Holy Child College, will be blessing us with advice on exactly how to do this. But first, indulge me when I tell you a little bit about this special big sister of mine. An accounting and finance graduate, Tokunbo Sonowo decided during a postgraduate degree in management studies to go for an MA in human resource management. I believe she found her true calling completing that course, as she has since spent 13 years as a resourcing and recruitment lead, working initially for the Crown Prosecution Service and now with the Department for Transport. She also holds membership status of the Chartered Institute of Professional Development. So believe me when I tell you that she knows what she's talking about when it comes to recruitment within the civil service. A woman of faith, she's also a mother to 3 young adults and will be remembered for being co-MC on 2 of our Social Secretaries Summit events, the last one held on the 7th of August. A woman of many parts, Tokunbo is more than what you see, a lot more than what you see. So it gives me great pleasure to call her to give her presentation with her formal nominal letters. So please give a warm welcome to Tokunbo Sonowo, HND, MA, MCIPD.
Thank you so much, Dayo, for that introduction. And welcome everybody to Access to Civil Service Jobs. Because we have a lot of ground to cover, I would just dive straight in. And I hope you can see the slides.
Yes, we can.
Yes, you can. Right. I know that you would have heard a lot of bad myths about being a civil servant. Things like, if you're a civil servant, you are a civil servant for life, meaning if you have a role, you stay in that role and there's no career progression or promotion. I'm sure you've heard also that the salary is not very competitive. But I've come to give you good news. If you work for civil service, or if you're a civil servant, you have the opportunity to make a difference to people's lives in the UK. You learn on the job, and the salary is competitive with additional benefits like flexible working, job share, and remote working. Pension is a norm with the civil service. Now, why now? Is this the right time to apply for civil service roles? Nobody predicted COVID-19 happening or the impact it would have on our lives and our lives in the future. Majority of people have been furloughed, and there's a lot of reconstruction or roles are being restructured, and there's a possibility that people might not return to their roles. So if I'm asking the question, is this the right time to apply for civil service jobs? My answer to that would be yes. Where do you start? You create an account with civil service jobs and you set an alert. You set the location, the grade, the salary range, and the profession. Like Dayo said earlier, all the links that you need for this presentation, I would send it to the chat once I conclude the session. We have permanent and contracting roles, and I've put it there on the PowerPoint slide. If you're going for agency, we use a particular agency, which is Brook Street, and you have the contact number there. And if you're applying for higher grades roles, then we have public sector resourcing, which we use. I did say here that types of roles, we have multiple roles in different professions that you would definitely find a role that suits your experience and skills.
Can somebody unmute Tokunbo, please? Tokunbo, you've been muted. Can I ask one of the hosts to unmute Tokunbo, please?
No, she needs to unmute herself.
Okay.
Okay. Did they hear the last slide, or do I have to go back there?
Just start from this slide.
Okay. So online assessment. Like I said before I came on, quite a lot of people called me regarding this particular topic. So I'll spend a little bit of time before we move on. With the online assessment, majority of our roles would have one type or the other of online assessment. This is due to the influx of applications that we're receiving from many of the roles that we have at the moment. Before you take an online assessment,
we don't want to, we don't want video. I don't want to.
Should I continue?
Please do, please do.
Yeah. Before you take your online assessment test, you need to be prepared. You need to take the sample test. You need to ensure that you're in a quiet room, and you need to not second guess yourself. So the first one is the Civil Service Judgment Test. It measures your ability to demonstrate judgment and decision-making regarding specific civil service behaviors, which I'm going to talk about in my slides. And these civil service behaviors is selected because it's important for the success in your chosen job. The Civil Service Judgment Test comes in two parts. The first one, it rates a series of statements that reflect preference and work behaviors. For example, it would ask you to rate, I adapt to change easily than others. And it would ask you to say whether you agree, disagree, strongly disagree, or strongly agree. Don't second guess yourself. It's your normal behavior and normal reaction when you're at work. Do you think that, or do you know that you adapt to change very easily than others? You choose the appropriate answer. The second part of the Civil Service Judgment Test is you're presented with a series of scenarios, and those scenarios have issues or problems of some kind, and some are presented in written form and some in a video clip to watch. And what you need to do is they would ask you how someone could take or behavior or respond to this situation. And what you would need to do in this case is to say whether that the issue, whether the action taken is effective, ineffective, counterproductive, and you will need to choose which one applies. But you need to base your answer on the scenario. You can't choose, you can't assume. The second one is the verbal reasoning. And this is the ability to identify relevant information and draw logical conclusions from written information. It would examine how well you use your language through a passage of text and corresponding questions. Usually, this would come in two ways, either multiple choice, or it would tell you to answer whether it's true, false, or you cannot say. You will be presented with some sentences to read, followed by a statement. You need to decide if this statement is either true, false, or you cannot see, based only, like I said, using the information shown in the sentence. The last one is the numerical test. This is the ability to perform calculations and evaluate and interpret numerical information to solve problems. The questions you would get here would be either a table, a graph, percentages, and other numerical questions. You don't have to have a maths degree to be able to do this. What I would like to say, though, is once you have one or two of these online assessments attached to a job role, you have to ensure that you do very well. The reason for that is that even though, for example, you score 50%, and you would think to yourself, I should be able to get through. But this is done in percentile. Is the percentage of your score is adjusted across everyone else that has done that test. So, for example, like I said, you scored 50%, and you have other people within the group score 60 and 70%. You would not get through because the majority of the group, the percentage of their score is the percentile of their score would be 60 or 70. So 50% will not get through. So it is very, very important for you to prepare. I've sent links that you would use to prepare, to test, and practice test questions. That's for the online assessment. And you would have it is the first point of call. If you don't pass the assessment, you will not move on to the next stage. So it's very important for you to pass this. Now I would go on to application and civil service behaviors. This is another very important segment. In all applications, you can be asked either to provide a CV and personal statement. This is not the usual CV and personal statement that you submit to external organizations. The personal statement in most of the applications, they would ask you to tailor it to maybe 3 or 4 questions that is based on the job profile. And I say job profile is also called a job description. And you have to ensure that when you're writing your personal statement, you have to make sure that you answer the 3 or the 4 questions that they're asking you based on your experience and based on the role profile. You need to have a good example to do that. And for your CV, there's so many online ways to ensure that you have a good CV. I did mention civil service behaviors, and there are 5 elements that are tested in the job profile or when you're applying for a role. These are experience, strengths, ability, technical, and the behaviors, like I said to you. This is a graph that shows exactly what the elements of the success profile is. You can see that for experience, it's saying they will test the knowledge or mastery of an activity or subject gained through involvement in or exposure to it. For the strength, they would test the things that you regularly do well, that motivates you. Here, what they're looking for is potential. And the ability is their technical, the demonstration of specific professional skills, knowledge, or qualifications. Particularly with the technical option, this would relate to roles like project deliveries, policy role, commercial roles, specification, analytical roles, where there's a profession or qualification that is attached to it. This link also will be provided to you so that you can read up on what they're asking. Now, I would give you an example of a role, a higher executive officer role or senior executive officer role equivalent, where one or two behaviors will be tested when you apply for this grade. Seeing the bigger picture. And the key indicators that they would like to see in your example is they want to understand the strategic drivers for your area of work, to align activities to contribute to wider organization priorities, remain alert to emerging issues and trends which might impact your work area, seek out and share experiences to develop knowledge of the team's business area, understand how the strategies and activities of the team create value and meet the diverse needs of all stakeholders. I'm sure you will say this is a mouthful. What are they asking me to do here? So for seeing the bigger picture, what you need to do is you need to think about a very good example of an experience, past role, or maybe the current role you're doing before you want to move on to this role. Think about a very good example and ensure that you still use STAR, which is the situation, the task, the action, and the result. And in all those key areas, what you want to use is the key indicators, which is how do you align the activities to contribute to a wider organization priorities. For example, what have you done in your past that would allow you to showcase this? How do you seek out and share experiences to develop knowledge of the team's business areas? Who are your stakeholders? So you need to use this STAR framework, situation, task, action, result, to answer this question and to ensure that you deal with all the key indicators mentioned under seeing the bigger picture. And the same thing is what you do for changing and improving. Give an example. What example? What technology were you using before in the organization? How did you manage to change this and sell it to your team or to the business? Who were the people you spoke to? How did you manage change? How did you embed the new change? So changing on behavior, make sure that you read the key indicators, which is work together to identify areas of improvement, use technology, encourage an environment. So with every of this behavior tested, you need to ensure that you are looking at the key indicators and you're tailoring your example to address all these key indicators. We do not use competencies anymore. It's changed from competency to behavior, because for competencies, it's easy for you to give an example of how you've done this. And all you do is find your example, you cram your example, and you pour it out. Now they want to make sure that we're getting the right people for the role with the right skills. So like I said, with the higher executive officer and senior executive officer roles, this is how you answer all the questions. You need to look at the behavior, look at the key indicators, find an example, use your STAR framework, and address all the key indicators. There are other things that they could ask. They could ask for leadership, communicating and influencing, working together. They can ask you developing self and others. For all these behaviors, I would send the link so that if you're applying for any roles or any grade, they would be asking you for some of these key behaviors, and you need to know how to answer them. Now, I have spoken about grades. I've said executive officer, I have said higher executive officer, and you'll be thinking, what are these? These are the grade structure. The first one is the administrative officer, which is the AO. Then you move on to the executive officer, which is the EO. The higher executive officer, which is the HEO. Senior executive officer, which is the SEO. You have the grade 7, grade 6, and then the other one is not showing, which is the director level, SCS1 and SCS2. And these are the salaries. You have the minimum and the maximum, and then you have the grade, you have the London grade and the national salary. What I would say briefly about the salaries, which would complement what I said about our salaries are competitive, is that when a role is advertised externally and you're bringing an experience to civil service that they don't probably have, you can actually ask for a salary uplift. And what the vacancy holder or the hiring manager in this case would do is, when they recognize that you're bringing an experience that nobody else have in the civil service, they will put in a business case for you for what we call recruitment and retention allowance. And what this would do is obviously bump your salary up. So don't be afraid, still join the civil service. Now, I'm going to graduate opportunities. And I'm sure that this will be interesting for parents. I mean, we've just had A-level results, we've had GCSE results, and we have graduates that have actually finished and are looking for roles. I'm trying to turn my page here. Look for roles. So what do we have? For the graduate opportunities, we have 3 choices to consider when recruiting civil service emerging talents. The first one is the direct entrance apprenticeship. These are usually done externally, and they are for people who have little or no experience, meaning they haven't worked before. Maybe they've just finished GCSE or they finished A-levels and they don't want to go to university. So that is the direct entry apprenticeship. It allows them to put their feet in to civil service and learn on the job. There's the second one, which we call the business admin apprenticeship. That is equivalent to A-levels. And what they do is, as they're working, they'll be completing their business admin coursework, and when they pass it, obviously they have a certificate. There's also, recently, there's also a policy apprenticeship and accounting apprenticeship. So if you are interested in policy roles, you come in at the direct entrance stage, right? And they would coach you, train you, and you'll be a policy person and you can move around the department. There's the fast stream. This is a civil service award-winning leadership development program. We have 15 fast streams, and the most popular is the generalist scheme covering 15 professions. With this one, that's the one that people who have finished university, that I would encourage them to go for. If obviously they're still looking for a job and they're thinking, you know, well, what do I do in the interim? Fast stream is a very good place to start. You're going to obviously do quite a lot of exercise, and you can come in either at the HEO level or SEO level or grade 7. And what would happen is that once you do the final assessment, you come in as a grade 7, which is, it's a good thing. So the last but not the least is the direct appointment scheme. This one is, excuse me, once you've done the fast stream and towards the 3rd stage, you do not pass the final exam. Instead of dropping you, what they will do is they'll put you under the near misses. And that's the direct appointment scheme. They are near misses, meaning then they'll place you as an HEO, which is the higher executive officer. don't forget that the fast stream is when you finish the last year, you're going to be going in as a grade 7. So if you grade 7, if you go back to the salary details, you see what that is. And this is just a snapshot of an example of the fast stream opportunities and the professions that we cater for. It's commercial, digital. So trust me, there's nothing you're looking for that you wouldn't find. And I would send a link. There's the entry stage in terms of when all these applications will come out in September and when they start putting people in. So you need to check the links and for your daughters, for your children, and tell them to check it out and see whether this is the best option for them for now. Obviously, when you join civil service, there's a lot of training and development. There's the project delivery development. People come in as HR professionals and they decide that they want to become a project delivery person. There's an in-house project delivery development plan that you can go on, and then you can change roles. There's Ignite and Velocity. There's on-the-job training. There's e-learning. The courses, continual professional development, and like I said, fast stream. I wouldn't talk too much about the security and nationality, apart from me saying to you that obviously you have to have the right to work before you join the civil service. And I don't want to go into details into who qualifies, who doesn't. When you apply for the role, they will send you an ID verification form where you see where you're at, if you're Commonwealth, what you need to do, how you need to do it. But security checks will be completed, and it's the baseline personality security checks, right to work, references. So if you haven't worked for a while, I would just encourage you to take voluntary work or make sure that your references are aligned. These are the useful links for every topic that I've covered. These are the useful links so that you can go back, refresh your memories, and that's it. Dayo, how long have I spent?
You're actually 3 minutes early.
Whoa, that's good.
Yes,
well, people might want me to go back to the online assessments and all, but look out for live and upcoming job opportunities. Right now, there's a bulk senior executive officer project roles. It's live, and there's online assessment attached to it. So if you want to apply for that, you need to go into your account and check out this one. We have the HEO, procurement and data, that's live as well. Upcoming ones are the finance roles, finance manager roles, specification lead, and many, many more. Any questions?
So hi, Tokunbo, this is Olu here. Hi, everybody. I've got a request. Could you kindly share the scale, the salary scale and bands again, please?
Okay.
The slide. And that's from a Tokunbo. There hasn't been a lot of questions raised in the chat at the moment, but if you do have a question, you can either raise your hand and let me know, and we can answer that question for you while we have Tokunbo.
So this, the grade structure and the salaries, yeah?
The salary scale and the bands, please.
Okay. Oh no, it's the other way. This one.
Correct, that's the one.
Okay, I mean, if there's no question, that some people sent me a question before. Somebody said, will there be opportunities for the for 50 plus to work and or to thrive in civil service? The answer to that is yes. Although there's an unconscious bias, about age, but different things have been put in place in that your application is anonymous. And when you come for interview, they would not ask for your age. But we have to be minded that there's an unconscious bias. But yes, anybody can apply for civil service. All you need to do is to ensure that you have the right experience. You make sure that you top up on your experience, read, you're skilled for the role, and no one can miss that. If you're skilled for the role and you have the right experience, that would not be a barrier.
Tokunbo, sorry to interrupt. There were two questions in the chat. I mean, I've got them written down so I can say it out if Olu doesn't have them. Olu, do you have the questions?
The questions are from Tokunbo Sonowo. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yeah, I do have the questions, but if you want to go ahead, that's fine.
No. You go ahead.
So the first question that Tokunbo wanted to raise was, using the STAR approach, what was the situation? What actual tasks the person, what actions do you take? What are the outcomes? And that was from Tokunbo Sonowo.
Yes, so that's right. So for the example that you're going to use, you're going to say what situation happened for you to take on that task. So the situation, the task is what are the things that you needed to do to ensure that you're doing an action. So task, I had to speak to HR, for example, to collect relevant information. I had to speak to external organization to ensure that the applications are done. I had to ensure, so the task is what you had to do. The action is actually what you carried out. After you've taken the information, what did you actually do? And then the outcome is, as a result of all those things that you've done, this is the outcome. Meaning you saved the organization 50%, or your revenue was increased, or you were actually thanked for doing that, or as a result, the process changed, and now you're embedding the new process and it's faster or easier to use, something like that.
Thank you. And just to let everybody know, the slides will be available after this presentation. So Tokunbo will make it available, because a lot of people are asking, will the slides and the PowerPoint presentation be available? So yes, it will be. I have another question from Tokunbo Sonowo again. And this question is, are there any barriers to applying to the graduate scheme?
Well, the graduate scheme, like I said, there are three types. The first one, which is someone who has little or no experience. Definitely, they wouldn't allow anyone who has a 2.1 or 2.2 or to apply for that. The fast stream is the one that you have to have, it's for graduates, like I said, it's a graduate scheme. You have to be a graduate with 2.1, 2.2. And I think that's it. So but you can't be a 50-year-old, for example, apply for a graduate scheme.
Okay.
I don't know whether that answers Tokunbo's question.
I'll wait to see if she replies. Thank you.
Okay.
And one last question from Tokunbo again, who's been very busy on the chat today. Are there any other developments internally in the civil service within the graduate scheme?
Yes. So if you, for example, have gone in through the fast stream, you are going to be rotated within the organization. So you're not just staying in the role that you've been given. You're going to be rotated. Is a rotation for HEO 6 months. For SEO and grade 7 is 12 months. So you're going to be rotated. So there's other opportunities. You might start as a policy person, and while you're being rotated, you decide that you want to be project, but you will still finish your rotation before you then apply for a role.
Okay, thank you. I have a question here from Kemi Shanuga, and she says, do you have any tips for interviews, please?
Right. Could you tell me that question again? Sorry.
She just wants to know if you have any interview tips, please.
Okay. Okay. At the moment, we're doing online interviews. So first, you need to ensure that you have technology that works. You have to be prepared. You have to be in a silent place. But then you have to ensure that you have all your examples, because the questions, there are no trick questions. The questions that they're going to be asking you is based on the behaviors that they've been tested. So in the form, I would say that at interview, you'll be tested against these behaviors. So make sure that the behaviors that they've highlighted in the job form, make sure that you read them. Make sure that for each of the behaviors, you have a very good example, and then have a second example, right? And then make sure that all the key indicators, you have used them very well in your examples, and then stick to STAR approach. When they ask you the question, so that you don't waffle, stick to the STAR approach. Tell them, if they, for example, when I did this project, this was the situation, and then talk to them about the task, talk to them about the action, and talk to them about the outcome.
Thank you. I have a question here from and let me just make sure, from Babatunde Williams.
Oludada, please, can I interrupt quickly? Can I appeal to everybody to please take time and complete the exit poll? Your time for doing that will be appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you. And I'll repeat that question again from Babatunde Williams. Please, can you explain how the civil service reserve list works? Is it only for the roles created by the specific hiring team?
Right, very interesting question. Reserve list. So for every government department, once you close your campaign and you have people on the reserve list, there's a centralized reserve list that we put this at the government recruitment service, not the, for example, DFT. Once I complete a campaign, I send it to GRS, which is the government recruitment service, and they put all these reserve list people according to their merit standard. Reserve list 1, reserve list 2, depending on their score. Anyone can access the reserve list. So it's important that if you're on the reserve list, you are on the reserve list for 12 months. So while you're on the reserve list, you have to ensure that you are looking for roles. Don't wait for either the departments that placed you on the reserve list to find a role for you. Of course, when a role becomes available in any government department, they'll go into that reserve list and they'll say, oh, there's someone on the reserve list, but they have to work on the reserve list on the merit list order. So if you're on the reserve list and you're on merit list 5, they can't give you a job unless 1, 2, 3, 4 has been placed. Or if they reject the role that they've been offered, then we can move on to the second reserve list. But make sure that you look for roles. And if before a job is advertised, maybe in your department, or you heard about another department, be proactive, give the hiring manager or vacancy holder a call and say, look, you're on the merit list for this, and the job type and the behaviors match your job role. So I think maybe you should take a look at campaign number 22456. So be proactive and ensure that you get yourself out of the merit list, because it's only there for 12 months. Okay.
Thank you. It seems to be the battle of the Tokumbos today. So I have another question from Tokunbo Sonowo, and he wants to know, is a graduate overqualified for a civil servant job like an AA or an EO?
No, definitely not. Particularly if you haven't worked in civil service before, right? And you don't have a job, or you want to come into civil service. The fact that you're a graduate doesn't stop you from applying for AO, EO, and any role. It doesn't. What matters is you know how to fill your form, you've checked the civil service behaviors, you're confident with the key indicators, you know how to fill your form, and then you obviously on the online assessment, you ensure that you pass that to move on to. So no, it doesn't.
Thank you. And we have a question here from Joe Fams. I've been working in retail for over 20 years at management level. How do I cross over to the civil service?
Easy. Once you have the account and you've set up your alert and you choose the grade, the location, the profession that you want to be in, and the organizations that you would want to work for, about 10 of them, make sure you choose the Department for Transport. They will then send alerts to you. What you need to do, it gives you the opportunity to look at the role profile, see whether you have transferable skills. And if you do, then you can apply. It's as easy as that. And once they send this role profile to you, to your alert, to your email, you can read it and see, okay, I applied for AO, or like you said, you're coming from a senior management role, maybe an SEO or a grade 7. When you read the role profile, it'll allow you to know whether you have the skills and the experience to do this grade 7 role. If you think, maybe not, then just apply for the SEO one. Get your fit in, and then you can apply for promotion.
Thank you. And it's still the battle of the Tokumbos. And I have another question. How easy is it to get promoted or to apply for a job at grade 7 or 6 level? And especially for people of color. And I'm thinking he's talking about me, that I'm blue.
Another good question. I would like to say, since the Black Lives Matters, certain things have been put in place where people of BAME would sit as panel members for the interview. So as a grade 6 and grade 7, the step here is, if you're an SEO, to get a grade 7 role is quite difficult, because as an SEO, you're doing its process, but for a grade 7 is strategy. So you're looking down, you have an umbrella view. So promotion is not difficult, but if you want a promotion, you need to ensure that, I would always say, have a mentor, and make sure you volunteer, shadow for the role that you want to get into. That is obviously if you're within civil service, if you're in civil service already, and ensure that you read the job profile and all the behaviors and the key indicators that they're asking for. Ensure that you have somewhere to learn that, either by shadowing, mentoring, volunteering, so that you have the skills and the experience. And then you can apply for the role. You can apply for promotion.
Thank you. I'm gonna mix this up here. I've got a K Oshin who's asked a question, not a Tokunbo this time around. I'm relieved. And he or she wants to know, does every government department recruit separately, or is there a central recruitment department for all government departments?
We all use the government recruitment service, which is the recruitment service we use. Apart from individual government departments having their own roles, obviously, and their own role profile. But then when we raise what you call a DVN, you're sending it straight to a central recruitment service, who would initiate an engagement call with the vacancy holder and tell them this is what they need to do. But for some other government department, they do their own recruitment themselves, but they still go through this central recruitment service, because there's a Civil Service Recruitment Commission that governs recruitment processes that we need to follow.
Thank you. We're back to the Tokumbos again, and he would like to know, and I think this is Tokunbo Seni, barriers internally versus experience within the organization. What are the barriers within the civil service for applying of a graduate scheme? How is it monitored for fair and consistent process? Would you like me to read that again?
Yeah, I think you should break it up a little bit.
Okay, so I'll take it again. And barriers internally versus experience within the organization.
Barriers internally
versus experience within the organization. What are the barriers within the civil service for?
Are they the, you know where the Burger King did? Because we can't park there.
Someone wants
sorry.
to eat Burger King.
Tokunbo, is this your Burger King request going on at the
No,
moment?
it's not me.
Okay, I'm just checking. For applying for the graduate scheme, how is this monitored fairly for fair and consistent process? So I think she's asking, you know, about the barriers in the civil service. Is it fair? How is it monitored? Do we know that we're getting a fair crack of the whip? I think is what she's trying to ask.
Well,
can I ask the question? Can I break it down? Is that okay?
If it's just the one question, Tokunbo.
Yes.
Yeah, well, basically what I said, what I meant by, you know, you have people internally,
you have
right,
what?
that has sort of risen through the grades, and then you have the graduates. So, you know, people like grown through the grades.
Yes.
Do you have people within the service that could apply for the graduate scheme? So basically you have the graduates and then you have the people internally. Are there any barriers to differentiate the two groups when they apply? That's the question.
Well,
I know there are about 2 or 3 questions in one, but
yeah,
that's
but
the question.
it's always based on your experience, because come to think of it, when you make the initial application, is anonymized, so they don't know your name. You say your roles, so it's really based on your experience rather than whether you're a graduate coming in or you already have an experience. The interview, you would have to do an interview, but although the graduate scheme is totally different in terms of if they come in via that route, or if they're coming in via the external campaign, is experience and how you have scored in your interview. Because the Civil Service Commission, if they find out when they do audits, which they do regularly, that there's a bias, the organization would be in real serious trouble. So it's your experience, it's your scores, and they have to justify it. You know, they have to provide an outcome, why they have scored this person higher than the other, why they have given this person the appointment while others are on a merit list. They have to show the rationale of doing that. So I think, and I can only speak for myself, that I don't think there's a barrier that is that visible. But like I said, there's an unconscious bias. But it's based on your experience, how you've performed an interview, and there's a justification and there's audit. So they can't just assume that, oh, this person has experience, well, and they did very badly in interview, we're still going to pass them because they have the experience, versus a graduate coming in fresh, has the experience, did the interview very well. Yeah. So I think have I answered your question?
Well, thank you. You've answered it, Patty, but it's fine. Basically, there's a process and there's a scoring system as well.
That's right. And
I hope there is transparency. Okay, thank you.
There is, and there is, because I am a recruitment and resourcing lead, and once the hiring managers total up their scores, they've done their interviews, and they send it to us, to my team. We look at the scores, one, to validate the scores and to ensure that we don't have a breach. And then secondly, if we see that the 2 scores there and they've decided to offer one person, I go back to say, what's the rationale? Why have you given this person the role and you haven't given this person? What are you looking at? What's the quality or the skills that you want in your role that this person has and you've given them and you haven't given the other? What behavior are you looking at? So we can only do our best.
Thank you. Mr. Moderator, how are we doing for time? I've got 3 more questions.
We're fast running out of time, but I've had a look at the next couple of questions and I think she's answered, Tokunbo has answered it. So the question in relation to someone who has been out of work for 5 years, someone who has been self-employed for 5 years, if you worked for the civil service in the past and took redundancy, I'll let her answer that question. But I think what Tokunbo has said repeatedly is that if you have the necessary experience and skill set and prepare for the interviews, you have that opportunity to go for any vacancies that you feel you are qualified for.
Well said, Dayo. The only other thing is that, for example, if you've worked with as a civil servant or in civil service and you leave and you want to come back, you can come back within 6 months. But after that 6 months, then you have to apply as if you're a fresh civil servant. Obviously, that would affect your pension in terms of a break and then you coming back. But nobody is exempted or prevented from applying for a civil service role. Nobody, you can come with your transferable skills and come into civil service. All you need to do is you need to read the success profile template, ensure that you understand the behaviors, ensure that you understand the key indicators under the behavior, use your STAR approach, and make sure you have a very good example. Because, I mean, we're having influx of applications, although we have multiple roles to fill, but we're having 400 applications, even for a PA role. And we're putting online assessment to ensure that we don't have any time wasters, people who really want to apply for the role. So it's about you making sure that you're prepared, really.
Thank you. And I have one last question here, the general question. And I started, so I'll continue.
Okay.
And are you available for bespoke sessions to help potential candidates prepare for this process? And that's just directed to you. Are you available to help people out?
Well, in my very nature, I would have said yes. But you need to remember that I still have my day job. And if I have to attend to everyone who wants help, then I can train. I can train, you know, but
maybe that's another session.
And guess what? There'll be a little fee.
Just a Burger King. That's all you need to worry about, guys.
Just a Burger King.
That's fair enough. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. This has been a great session and clearly topical with the questions that are coming through. It is clear that there is still an interest in working for the civil service. So thank you so much. I mean, I guess if you're going to take anything away from what Tokunbo has said today, it's the requirement to have a look at the job profiles and use the STAR approach. Practice the online assessments. If you are within the civil service or you are thinking of transferring into a senior role, get a mentor, shadow, volunteer. That's the only way you can get access to the requirements and the examples that you would use in your interview, is if you are already operating at that level. So thank you so much. This has been very useful. I think, like Rashid said, the slides will be made available afterwards for anyone who wants to have a look at it. Is there anything else I've missed? Has everyone completed the exit poll? That's very, very important for us to determine how we are doing and if you'll be interested in having events of this nature. If there isn't anything else, I will hand over to Olu to do the thank yous. But thank you so much, Tokunbo. I enjoyed it very much. I worked for the civil service years ago and I left. I haven't been back since. Who knows?
Come back.
Who knows? Olu.
Can I ask that Tokunbo stop sharing so that we can see?
Okay.
Yes.
So, ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of the Social Secretaries Summit, and that's all of us social secretaries and fellow members of alumni, I'd like to give the following appreciation to Tokunbo. Thank you very much for blessing us with your knowledge, guidance, and tools to propel us and ours forward. To all those who have Zoomed in, I thank you very much for supporting us with your presence and your time this evening. To the hosts working behind the house, Bumi, Rashid, Tola, Femi, I thank you for your continuous support for these SSS events. and to Sister Tola, who continues to hold us all together as a part of our reaching out and touching. I say a big thank you from all of us. And on that note, I'd like to bid you all a nice weekend. Stay safe, everybody. Thank you.